All right, hello everybody. We are trying out some new cards and black-white tokens as we've been doing for some months now. I know you guys have liked these videos and like trying new cards, and a lot of fans of this deck, so I'm happy to keep doing this because I'm a big fan of this deck. Um, I'm recording this deck tech after I played a league. I've recorded the matches already, so um, I just wanted to get through the deck tech and show you guys. Should be 3 matches coming up. The first 2 I played on my own, just testing it out a little bit, and they were both ad nauseum matchups, both first 2. So nothing exciting, and we went 1-1 in those matchups, in those matches with ad nauseum, which is about right with those kind of storm ad nauseum decks. Tend to be pretty 50-50 split, at least with this build here. So anyway, no, wasn't too exciting of matches. They either get there or they don't. That's just not a big fan of that deck for that reason. They just don't. I mean, I guess they lead to some exciting matches, but now I'm getting soapboxy. The reason we're here is Call to the Feast. New card from Ixalan. Again, any black-white token maker powerful card is something I'm going to look at. It's what happened to start to finish, and I am of the opinion that this start to finish should just be a staple in black-white tokens now. Certainly in the current format or the metagame of Modern. So that was just from testing it out, and I think I kind of just start with 2 in every list now. I think 3 could be good, but it's a little too much, but I think you usually want 1. So try and Call to the Feast. Basically, the idea, all I did here was make it a direct swap for, I usually play 3 Spectral Processions, and I just swapped them with 3 Call to the Feasts. Pretty easy, not changing the deck too much. Spectral Procession usually ends up costing 4 anyway, especially in a pretty swamp-heavy deck. Like I said, I've run Liliana's in this deck before, so the double black is necessary, and running a Westvale Abbey, 4 Ghost Quarters still, so it's a lot of colorless lands that sometimes you just don't get there, or pretty often you don't get there with Spectral Procession, especially because you don't always want to, shock yourself for the untapped Godless Shrine to play Inquisition or Thoughtseize. Just so many decks are aggressive that the extra 2 life is a problem. So I do like to fetch for basics periodically, especially in a 2-color deck when we're not that mana intensive. If I can afford to fetch for basics, I will, against a lot of matchups. Obviously, if you're playing blue-white control, it doesn't matter, but this is a grindier deck, so the life really does matter. Anyway, that being said, because the life does matter, and because Spectral Procession does end up costing 4 more often, really what we're doing here is we're changing, it's 4 mana for 3 life linkers instead of 3 flyers. That's really all what we're doing. And given everything we're just saying about the life loss and how many decks are pretty aggressive, not all, obviously, but I think the life link will end up being relevant. I mean, Sorin is an excellent card for that reason, just because it allows you to have those 6 to 8 point life gains, or really it'd be like if you've got 3 tokens, you're attacking in the air, that's 6 life link is a 12-point life swing, like that ends up being pretty big. So kind of hoping for the same with Call to the Feast, even on its own, but Call to the Feast Intangible Virtue obviously is excellent. And the thought process was, again, a lot of decks are aggressive, in which case you'd probably rather have a lifelink, especially by turn 4, where you're usually behind with this deck by turn 3 or 4. That's when you start to snowball, so you're really trying to catch up by then. And the deck does a good job catching up, but something like this allows you to catch up. The other decks that are really popular right now are combo decks, Storm specifically, but ad nauseum's up there, and there's a lot of combo decks in which whether you have flying or lifelink is irrelevant. It's just paying 4 mana for 3 tokens is what you're looking for, and Spectral Procession is slightly better against those decks because you have the potential to cast it on turn 3. But I don't usually find that, even if I could cast Procession on turn 3, that I would against a lot of those combo decks. I'm really hoping to cast Collective Brutalities and Inquisitions, trying to tear apart their hand, and if it's Storm, I'm trying to kill their Electromancers and Brawls anyway. trying to land a Bitter Blossom early. So I'm doing a lot in the first turns that I wouldn't otherwise. And maybe even instant speeding a start in the deck. So I think against the combo decks, it's irrelevant, and against the aggressive decks, this is going to be better. So that's what we're here to test out, basically. The rest of the list is pretty normal. I got removal and discard. I got intangible virtues. One thing that, again, I'm bringing an Oriok champion again. I think the life gain's pretty good right now. Again, it's a great card against Grixis Death Shadow because it blocks all their black creatures. Actually, all their creatures, period, except for Snapcaster Mage, but that's not really a big threat when you've got tokens. But and Jund can't kill it either. Grixis can't kill her. So it ends up being a pretty good stall-out type card. Again, I think the life gain's good because it allows us to play 4 Thoughtseize total. Allows us to fetch shock more relevantly. Bitter Blossom lately, I've sometimes shaved down to 2 just because of the life loss. And keeping Oriok Champion and Call to the Feast, adding extra life gain, I think, allows us to go back to 3 Bitter Blossoms, which is just a super powerful card. So keeping that. Because we do have this extra life gain, the other thing I'm doing is instead of running 3 Sorin Solemn Visitors, I am going 2 Solemn Visitors. Again, this card's great, but I'm adding a Lord of Innistrad. I've really been trying to find a way to slot this into this deck more. Much like Gideon or Bitter Blossom, it provides a token every turn. But much like there's 4 mana Elspeth that I've played before, and then Gideon, obviously, that can make a token every turn, right? This Sorin, while the Anthem effect and lifelink is great, and that's its primary mode, the fact that you can make tokens with this secondarily is good, but you're still making a token like every 3rd turn or every other turn until they kill it or something, like that. Whereas this can just plus and make a token every turn. Yes, a 2/2 flyer is better than 1/1 lifelink, but not really by much. Again, with virtues, they're similar, and again, we have a good amount of flying with Bitter Blossom and Lingering Souls anyway, so just being able to plus every turn to make tokens is pretty huge. And again, the reason we don't play Elspeth, for example, is that just the Anthem effect is better. Gideon's also very good. I'll probably try Gideon's out in this deck a little bit more. I have before. But I just like being able to plus for tokens, and I also like being able to pump your team without losing the Planeswalker, right? Sorin gives +1/+0 every turn, obviously, and this Sorin, much like Gideon, gives you an emblem that's an Anthem effect, which is very relevant. The difference being that this Sorin then sticks around and can pump out tokens if you are making an emblem, whereas the Gideon just dies if you make the emblem. So, and again, where these Planeswalkers are good, where you need them to be good, are against matchups where you need them to make tokens every turn. So being able to make a token every turn and act kind of like another Bitter Blossom and like another Intangible Virtue is pretty huge. So I like this card a lot. It's just I've found that sometimes, like, as much as you have to lifelink Vampire, it's that lifelink's not enough compared to the 4, 6, 8 points of life gain you can get when the first turn you drop a Sorin. Especially, again, you're not really gaining life with this Sorin until maybe if you block with your lifelink or until the next turn, and it's just 1 life or 2 life or 3 life. So given that we've got the champions and the Call to the Feast to buffer our life total a little bit more, I want to try this out. The other thing it's not new in general, but it's newer compared to the list I've been posting, is I'm playing Secure the Waste. Again, go to champion. More token making at instant speed I think is good against, can ambush other creature decks, and it's really good against the control decks. Just obviously sweepers is how they try to control you. So being able to, I've liked start to finish a lot in that sense. Like, it's a raise the alarm type effect that you can do it at the end of their turn. You can also hold up mana if you need to hold up mana for a Path to Exile or a Disenchant eventually or something like that. So being able to hold up mana, decide if you want to interact with your opponent, and then if you don't, Secure the Waste is pretty good. Sideboard's about the same. running the 4 Thoughtseize just because I think we can now. And again, with a lot of combo decks, we want that. I guess this is the not standard stuff. Everything else is the same. Rest in Peace, Surgical Extraction for graveyard decks, Disenchant for anything. Also good against Affinity, and Stony Silence for Affinity and other type decks. Lantern Control. Sorry, that's the Affinity's not a problem. Lantern Control is why we have Stony Silence and Disenchants. That deck is darn near impossible to beat, at least with this build of tokens. Cut a Blessed Alliance from the main deck for the second Auriok Champion. So whereas Auriok Champion's usually on our sideboard, so I'm bringing Blessed Alliance. It's good against burn as life gain and a creature thing. It's good against Death Shadow. It kills one of their threats. Good against Eldrazi Tron. Thoughtseize is good against Eldrazi Tron as well. Any Tron, and good against combo decks, which is fine. And then what I'm trying out here is Liliana. This Liliana Last Hope. It is. I didn't really think one Liliana Veil was worth it. So for this last one, I'm trying this one. Again, it's good against elves. There's that Esper Humans deck that came out recently that this is decent against. Kills Mayor of Averbrook and kills the Noble Hierarch and whatnot. Probably not Champion of Parish, but that, not Esper, the 4 or 5 color humans deck that did well last weekend. That looks like it's a real deck. Good against Death and Taxes, and which was also big last time. And then again, elves, Affinity, Burn. It's good against all of those. Specifically Affinity, good against Infect 2, for their what's it called? Whatever the land creature is, and then they have something else that they play, where it's pretty good. Sorry, all of theirs, all of Infect. Now that I think about it. And then because we're playing Call to the Feast instead of Spectral Procession, that's less flyers to block against Affinity. So to block things like Signal Pest, obviously Liliana doesn't get the creature lands, the Nexuses, Inkmoth and Blinkmoth. But we still have some tokens for that. But it does start at least taking away, picking off some of their creatures. So I think as much as the life gain's good against Affinity, the flying's good against Affinity too. So I think our Affinity matchup is neutral or maybe down. So Liliana should be good against that. So something we're trying. Again, we're not really ever getting a creature back. You're never really getting Auriok Champion back because this doesn't die. I mean, after sideboard, if I'm keeping Auriok Champion in, it's because it's against a matchup where she won't die. And the decks that I might keep it against, like Burn, the only way they would kill it is with Path to Exile, in which case you can't get back Lily anyway. So it is kind of a nomo. She really just has 2 modes in this deck. But that's the other thing, is the ultimate. Against controlling decks, having another threat that they can't sweep away, can't answer very well, like against Blue-White, for example, that she will just take up as long as they don't counter her on the way down. They can bounce her with Cryptic Command on, when she's at 6 loyalty or whatever, maybe 7. But having some form of inevitability against those controlling decks is something that I'm looking forward to as well. So anyway, this is the list. Hope you guys enjoy the matches.